Hey everyone, welcome back to Atomi Geography. In this video, we are going to be looking at different types of population movements. We can distinguish between population movements in three main ways: why people move, where people move, and how long they are moving for. First up, we'll look at the difference between forced and voluntary movements, the why of movements. Then we'll distinguish between internal and international migrations, the where of movements. And finally, we're going to wrap up by looking at temporary versus permanent population movements. So that's our how long question. So let's dive straight in. To start off, we can distinguish between population movements based on why people move. This gives us both forced and voluntary population movements. A forced population movement is when people have no choice other than to relocate somewhere else. This might be because they are fleeing war, persecution, natural disasters, poverty, or other extreme hardship and life-threatening circumstances. Refugees and asylum seekers are people who have been forced to flee to another country and are part of a forced population movement. On the other hand, a voluntary population movement is when people choose to move and live somewhere else. This might be because of economic, social, or personal reasons, such as for work or family. For example, economic migrants are people who have decided to leave their country for a better quality of life in another country. Because this was their choice, they are part of a voluntary population movement. Another way that we can differentiate between population movements is where people are moving from and to, either internally or internationally. When people move from one place to another within the same country, this is known as an internal population movement. This can include when people move from one city or town to another, for example from London to Newcastle in the UK. It might also be people moving from rural to urban areas. This process is known as urbanisation or rural to urban migration. On the other hand, there is a counter-urbanisation, which is when people move from urban to rural areas. Although there are lots of different examples of internal population movements, the important thing to remember is that they only include migrations around the country, not in and out of it. That brings us onto the next type of population movement. When people move from one country to another country, for example from China to Australia, this is known as international population movement. This is what's commonly called international migration. We can break this down even further. When people migrate out of a country, this is called emigration. And when people move into a new country, this is known as immigration. So now we have looked at different population movements based on why people move and where people move to and from. The final way we can compare population movements is based on how long people move for. Now, not all population movements are permanent. Although some people may migrate permanently, others may only move for temporary periods. For example, many people may migrate annually or seasonally due to employment or lifestyle reasons. So we can add temporary and permanent population movements to our list of different types of population movements. Finally, when people move back and forth regularly between two places, this is known as circular migration. For example, when people move on a regular basis between their rural hometown and an urban centre to study or work while maintaining strong ties to their place of origin. And that brings us to the end of the video. Before we wrap up, let's quickly recap what we've learnt. In this video, we looked at different types of population movements based on why, where, and how long people migrate for. These include forced, voluntary, internal, international, temporary, and permanent population movements. Their names are pretty self-explanatory, but remember to keep these terms handy when describing different kinds of migratory movements. That's all for now. See you next time.